Hey everyone, this is Charles Coleman, the team leader of Keller Williams Avenues Realty. And today I have with me
Shelby Brown, real estate agent with Keller Williams.
awesome Shelby. So I super appreciate you being on this call with me. And the first question that I have for you is when did you become a licensed real estate agent?
I got my license in August of last year, so August of 21.
August of 21. And what were you doing? What made you decide to get your real estate license?
I was working as like an administrative assistant and transaction coordinator for a different realtor.
Mhm.
And she encouraged me to get my license. And so I said, might as well.
There you go. So you've actually been in the industry prior to having your license,
Mhm.
which is pretty awesome. I think it makes the transition a little bit smoother. So you just said that you're with another brokerage. What made you choose to make the switch over to KW?
I think in the other brokerage, I didn't have the same kind of community. It was just myself and my boss at the time, or she was my boss, and then we were both realtors. So that transition was kind
Yeah.
of weird for her to navigate. And yeah, I wanted the support and the classes and the different viewpoints of multiple people, and the
Mhm.
education piece. And so a friend of mine recommended this specific Keller Williams brokerage. And that's how I got connected to it and signed up.
There we go. I like it. So, one of the things that you did was you just had your first closing with us, and I know it wasn't your first closing in the industry. So I wanted to congratulate you. And where did this client come from?
I met this client on, I go to church in Denver and I do, there's a thing called Thursday morning prayer, which is at 6:30 a.m. on
Mhm.
Thursdays. Not very many people go to it, but somehow I meet a lot of people there. And this guy walked in, visiting for the first time, mentioned they were thinking about starting to look for a house. And I got really excited about it and probably
Mhm.
overwhelmed them. And then I apologized afterwards for being like, oh, do you need help? But that's how we met and
Mhm.
got connected. And I met up with them just to kind of talk through the home buying process. They're first time home buyers. They just got married
Mhm.
a couple months before. So we sat down and talked for it's like 3 hours, I think, just through the whole process
Yeah.
and such. And then, yeah, and then they followed up with me and said, hey, we want to use you as our realtor. And how do we move forward? So that was kind of the process with them.
That's awesome. And I love hearing stories like that because I think that there's a lot of agents that get into this business and they get overwhelmed with the lead generation activities. And this is doing something that's already in your daily routine that where you didn't go out and do anything different than what you would typically do. And the business followed from there, which I think is awesome.
Mhm.
What was one of the biggest obstacles you faced in this transaction as the industry is kind of shifting right now?
Well, I started looking with them in the beginning of February,
Mhm.
which is when it was still the prices were going up 5 to 6% a month.
Yeah.
They're first time buyers from California. He was employed. She wasn't. She was looking for a job,
Mhm.
and there was actually miscommunication about that with the lender. So they wanted to stick within a certain amount, but the lender had said they could qualify for a lot more. So there was some back
Yeah.
and forth about what that looked like. Um, and then, yeah, it was just, we looked from February through May,
Mhm.
we put in 12 offers, and they just
Okay.
couldn't, it was a lot. And that was showing every weekend. I don't think they were out of town one weekend and I went and FaceTimed them from a couple and I was out of town for one week and other people in the office covered for me to show them. So I don't think we really took a weekend off the whole time. And they just didn't have the space to compete in the market the way it
Mhm.
was in the spring.
Yeah.
And so there were multiple times when we were like, came in second, or we were 1,500 low,
Yeah.
or yeah, just some weird situations with listing agents. And it was pretty discouraging for them, for me. And it took a long time. So we
Yeah.
ended up getting the sixth place that we offered on. We had the agent told me they had the strongest offer,
Mhm.
and then they didn't accept. Well, we had the strongest offer, and they didn't accept it, because he had a bunch of information that was incorrect in the MLS, and I had corrected it, and he said it would be bumpier,
Oof. Yeah.
working with us, and I was very angry. And then we continued looking and looking and looking.
Mhm.
And then 6 offers later, that place I heard through the grapevine was coming back on the market because they had fallen
Mhm.
out for the second time. So I reached out to that agent again and said, hey, how's it going? And he let me know they had
Mhm.
just fallen out. So we worked on a lot of stuff that week, paperwork wise, or stuff with the HOA we had to figure out.
Yeah.
And then we ended up resubmitting before they relisted
Mhm.
it as active in the MLS so that we didn't have to compete on it. Basically gave them almost the same offer we had offered before, but we didn't increase it or anything like that. And that's how we got the home. And they closed a couple weeks ago and moved in last week, I think.
That's
So
awesome. Yeah. And so
finally,
you went through a lot. I mean, that is a long span of time and a lot. It sounds like a roller coaster, right? To where we're going through, we're showing properties, we're competing for properties, and we're getting so close. And it sounds like you've had to probably manage not only your own expectations at that point, but truly had to work with your client and manage their expectations. It sounded like weekly at that point.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, with this, what was the biggest win that you had? I mean, obviously, going through and getting to the closing table is a huge win, but spending a lot of time, the closing was in June for the time of this recording. So what was the biggest win from February to June with this client?
Um, that's a good question. I think helping them adjust their expectations. They started off,
Yeah.
I told them up front, like, this is what's available. We looked at the MLS, like, this is what's available in your price range. I sat them down and did the math for them of like, if you don't have to be in a rush, but if we, look at this place right now, and then in 3 months, if it continues to increase the way it's been increasing, it's going to be this much, like it's going to go up 15% between now and then potentially. And then you're priced out and we can't look at it, and because they were
Yeah.
being they just had really, really high expectations. Their initial list that they sent me, their like dream home features,
Yeah.
was like $1 million home in the mountains, and so just trying to not discourage them from looking, but also help bring their expectations to a reasonable level took some time. And then like also kind of monitoring their language of like, I didn't want them to feel desperate. Like you don't have to offer on something you
Yeah.
are going to hate living in, but you also can't be so picky that we offer on nothing because you're going to get priced out. And by June, by the middle of May, I was like, we're right on that line of like the places we started looking at 360 and now priced at 410. And
Mhm.
they have zero space to compete at 410. We just can't do it. And so I was in that space trying to navigate, like, how do we get them into a home before, if it keeps going up, which it ended up kind of chilling out right then. But, just trying to help them because I wanted them to be able to get their first home and have the stability, and the timelines with their rent were tricky and all that kind of stuff. So I think the biggest one was probably helping bring their expectations to a reasonable level that still felt exciting. Like I didn't want them to just feel like, well, we have to settle for something we greatly
Yeah.
dislike, but we do have to bring our it's a hard balance between those two things. So I think that was probably the biggest win, was trying to get them ready so that when we could actually get something without having to fight a ton of people for it, they were in the right mindset to really think about it like really logically and also be excited about it. And they seem more excited now too, which is fun. So
Yeah. Well, I think that's a huge skill to have, especially I'm gonna go with newer agents, especially with just getting licensed in 21, right? Is that you did have to do a lot for this client. And when you start hearing about them managing the expectations and going through the dream list and figuring out, what is a must and what is a we can live with now because this is not for my forever home. That's a huge skill to have. And so I love hearing stories like that. What you hinted on in the very beginning about the support and the training and the different pieces, and that was some of the pieces on why you came over to the brokerage. What kind of support did you receive during this transaction from the brokerage?
a big one was people reviewing my contracts. There were a lot of
Mhm.
them. on a lot of
Yeah.
weekends. There was one week where I wrote 3 separate offers for them, or some places where we put in multiple contracts because of
Yeah.
back and forth with agents and that sort of thing. And so Bob being available a lot
Hmm.
was extremely
Yeah.
helpful, being able to call him. And then when he couldn't, several other people in the
Mhm.
in the office were able to step up and cover for me. And I think it was really helpful that I knew Elizabeth Conable coming in, because
Yep.
if any of the leadership in the office was unavailable, I knew I could reach out to her also and have some backup plans. So I think it was good to have developed some, during that time, I also developed relationships with other agents in the office.
Yeah.
But I felt like I didn't actually kick up on work in the office until January, probably because the
Right.
holidays and timing and everything.
Hmm.
So I think the support of reviewing contracts, giving me advice about, hey, this is what the listing agent's telling me. What's your opinion? Would you do this? Would you not? Navigating all the crazy strategies, because I didn't want, especially for first time buyers, it's really important for them to know exactly what they're agreeing to on the contract. So I didn't want
Yeah.
them to throw out their earnest money or their inspection or that kind of thing, if they didn't absolutely have no other option. And if they
Yeah.
did that, I needed them to be fully okay with it, you know what I mean, and
Hmm.
understand that clearly. And it's hard when you're a new buyer to understand all the implications of all these things that are on all the contracts. And it was so much to keep up with, like which house is which and how many things are we writing on. So I think having
Yes.
people in the office to help me strategize of like, how should I present this to them? Is this strategy going to be helpful or harmful to them in the long run? And
Right.
like having people to be real with is like, I'm
Hmm.
very discouraged about this process, which you're not going to do with your buyers. You know what I mean? You have to like stay encouraged for them. But sometimes it's discouraging, like doing that many offers and contracts and getting rejected and watching them just get priced out. And at one point I was like, they're going to move back to Florida. Like everyone in
Yeah.
their spheres are like, why are you going through this? Like, just move. And so I was nervous that they were going to just move away and give up. And so, but
Yeah.
of course I couldn't like say any of that to them. So just being able to process that separately with people in the brokerage and then come back and be
Hmm.
encouraging to them while also having some good, I don't know, qualifying statements, like it is
Right.
possible, it takes some time, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
was really, yeah.
No, and I like hearing that as well, right? When we start going through and talking about these different pieces with not only is the managing broker available and there is the executive leadership team, anyone reaching out there, but you can also reach out to anyone in the brokerage and they're willing to help, which I think is huge, especially when there is strategy needed, or can you just review this for this particular situation? And you're not calling a 1-800 number, right? Or you're not waiting for just like that one person that is your only point of contact. I think that's just definitely one of the powers of the brokerage. So I'm glad you got to experience that on this transaction. So my favorite question to ask is, what advice do you have for someone that is just starting out or is maybe struggling to launch their career?
um I think it's kind of like you said, as far as being active in your sphere goes.
Mhm.
Almost at this point, all of the leads and clients that I've worked with have all come from organic relationships that I had.
Yeah.
And so I've done some, throughout the spring when I was working with these clients, I had several good leads that ended up not panning out. And I was like, okay, I got to adjust my strategy a little bit, because I was hoping to get some referrals from people I used to work with at a bank, and nothing came
Mhm.
from that. I was hoping to do some stuff in the neighborhood and hadn't like had that opportunity in winter and different things.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I need to set that up. How can I do that in a way that's beneficial to the neighborhood, but also lets people know I exist, that kind of thing. And then within my sphere, several people that I knew were buying this year and are good friends of mine used someone else
Mhm.
for whatever reason. And so
Yeah.
like those leads all kind of faded on me, and I was just stuck with these buyers that I couldn't get under contract for months.
Yeah.
And it was hard. And so I was like, I think being in that spot, being able to recognize like, to keep doing the work for the people you have really well, And then to be willing to adjust your strategy. So I think doing the neighborhood thing was a big deal for me. Like, this is something I like, this is something I want to do. And I also had a couple of different things lined up in June, like how can I, give, what can I do during this month to make it possible for me to get some other kinds of leads in, because the ones that I thought were going to come didn't come in like I had expected. So I think being able to adjust my strategy, and I was trying to be proactive about that. So I wasn't, because you have to give some things time to work. So there's an element of patience and perseverance involved, but then you don't want to just wait around for something to magically happen either. So I think once I had waited for a little bit, I was like, all right, I need to do some proactive things and switch my strategy a little bit, do those things. And then it just so happened that in that same time when I was doing that, I think I will probably end up with one. I have a good lead, but they're not ready to move yet from the neighborhood event, which was really my goal. I mean, it was kind of expensive. I was like, if I get one good lead from this, and it's a huge ad, like the relationships I have with neighbors are way better. So like lots and lots of things have happened since then, unrelated, that have been good. But if I get one lead from this, that would be great. And the neighbors across the street want to buy an investment property. So that'll probably pan out at some point. But it just so happened that while I was trying to be proactive about those things, several other things from my sphere came in. So someone that I had closed last fall referred a listing to me. And then he just sent me another client this morning, like, hey, these friends are moving out from California. Some people I'd been like waiting on suddenly are able to move because they got a job. Like, so a lot of things sort of fell in that I'd been keeping up on, but also just sphere things, that have popped up. So it just so happened that all kind of started rolling at the same time. But I think the proactivity was helpful for being able to feel like you're still moving forward. You're not just stuck in some spot. So you got to keep moving forward, but also be ready and available for when things pop up that are unexpected, that you didn't necessarily chase down. But when they come up, you're ready, so that you're not sitting around for a month doing nothing. And then suddenly you have 3 clients, you got to stay consistent, irrespective of who you have and what's necessarily going on. I think has been really helpful.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that we hear, right, especially with newer agents, is that they're on that roller coaster, and they're on that roller coaster to where we have business at the top, and then we ride the business down, and then it's like, oh my goodness, I have to go find business again, and then we keep going back and forth. And so, what I like what you just said was, I'm going to be doing business through the activities that I like to do, and the people that know me, like me, and trust me. And that I still know that I need to bring more people into that world, into my Met database. And so getting proactive with the neighborhoods and more events to keep building your database and the people to bring into that ecosystem to help them and be their real estate economist of choice. So Shelby, I super appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today about your first closing with our brokerage. And I'm excited to see what the rest of 2022 holds for you.
Thank you so much. I think when you were speaking, I thought of one other thing. I think is like, play to your strengths as far as lead gen goes, because everybody likes elements of it and everybody hates elements of it. And I think I've something I've been really trying to do is figure out, what do I really enjoy enough, or like enjoy the fruit of some element. I like this element of this activity, because that's going to make it more sustainable long term, rather than trying to do 17 different things that I don't really like, because I don't keep up on it. As soon as you have a client, you let that go because you don't like it anyway. And then you end up on that up and down. Whereas I think if, trying to strategize and be flexible, of course, but also recognize these are things that I'm good at and I enjoy, and it might take a little longer maybe, but also it'll be more sustainable long term for me, has been really helpful, because it's hard for me to be motivated to do things I hate, and that have like a 1% return. It's just not something I want to spend my time doing. So I think figuring out, like, I need to do different kinds of lead gen, but I love hosting events and I love being present FaceTime, like with people. It's like a neighborhood thing. It's a good fit for me. Whereas other people like to call people and I just don't like it that much. You know what I mean? So just like figuring out what you enjoy and playing to your strengths while being aware of your weaknesses and flexible, all those things. But like, I think playing to the strengths is really helpful for like actually sustainable lead gen
Yeah.
and consistency, so that it's not quite so up and down because you drop it as soon as you possibly can.
Right.
It's
Mhm.
not great to have that mentality about it.
Which is a great insight to have, because none of us get into this thing because we're just like, I can't wait to go out and lead gen and build up my database. Like, that's not what anyone gets into real estate to do. And when you
Mhm.
can find something that you enjoy and you can actually play red light, green light with it, like, do I enjoy doing this? Does it have a return on investment for my time? Does my quality of life still work, right? Like, does it all make sense? Like, that's huge. So I super appreciate that insight as well. Well, like I said, Shelby, I appreciate our time today, and let's continue to crush it in 2022.
Thanks so much, Charles.
Thank you.